Versace, the label of racy garments and logo of the head of the mythical Medusa. The current valuation of the firm exceeds $2 billion. Nevertheless, it all began with a youngster from a rural area with dire economic conditions. There are many reasons for Versace's meteoric rise to the top of the luxury fashion industry, not the least of which is its commercially successful narrative. You see, Versace had his life cut short by a brutal assassination. Gianni Versace, Childhood and Adolescence, Chapter 1. Gianni Versace was born in a small, economically struggling town in Italy in 1946. Because of the poor economy and high rates of illiteracy, many residents left for larger cities in search of work as coal miners and farmhands. His mother, Francesca, despite their circumstances, made a living as a seamstress, while Antonio's father worked in the appliance industry. They were able to remain in their hometown and rise to the middle class through hard work and determination. They had the means to buy a car and a television, making them one of the few families in town with such luxuries. But things were not what they seemed to be in the Versace home. Gianni, you see, was one of 3 children: Santo, his sibling, and Fortunata, his sibling. In 1952, while the family was at a fun fair, his sister scraped her knee and got tetanus. After giving her the incorrect medication, she was only 10 years old when she passed away in her party dress, just 24 hours after the celebration began. Gianni's parents decided to have more children after losing her. Say hello to Donatella. Gianni was only 10 years old, but they quickly became inseparable pals. As a child, Gianni often accompanied his mother to her dress shop, where he watched as she transformed her customers into the most stunning women on the planet. In fact, he was in there so often that Mum's concerned that he wasn't spending enough time at the dress shop. It was also common knowledge that Gianni was a bad influence. He was doing poorly academically and frequently skipping class to hang out at the beach. Every cent of his allowance went towards buying the latest fashions, glossy magazines, and concert tickets. His parents were worried about him because he didn't appear to have any goals in life. They pushed him to enroll in college despite his early demonstration of inability to succeed academically in that setting. While he was at school, his mum had a meeting with the teacher. He told his mother that his notebooks were full of drawings of hot women. Unfortunately, his teacher called him a sex maniac, but his mother knew that he was not really sketching women, just the clothes they wore. Gianni had to take a final exam in order to receive his high school diploma. However, he didn't give a hoot about education, so he never finished high school. His father was understandably upset and worried that his son was making a fool of himself. However, Gianni had already decided on his career path, so he began working full-time in his mother's dress shop right away so that her son, then 19-year-old Gianni, could strike out on his own. Gianni's mother opened a shop next to her workshop in 1965. The store was called El di Francesca Versace to honor Francesca Versace. He set off for various locations in Europe to acquire the finest works he could find. While traveling, he befriended several future influential fashion designers, including Karl Lagerfeld. However, Gianni's mother was appalled by the merchandise he brought home from his travels. For such a sedate seaside community, they were shockingly revealing. He was purchasing skimpy cocktail dresses and other revealing clothing for women. But he knew exactly what young girls wanted. The town's female residents quickly flocked to the shop. Gianni's smart bets paid off. This was his first business venture, and it went well. Spreading his wings, Gianni's mother taught him to sew while he was helping stock the store with the latest trends, so he could create dresses of his own design. Gianni always brought his sketchbook along on their visits to different clothing factories. Here he was introduced to the people behind the Florentine Flowers knitwear line. At the age of 25, they noticed his talent for design and invited him to Tuscany to work for them. Gianni was intrigued by the new opportunity, so he moved to Tuscany. His employers were so pleased with the results of his first collection that they rewarded him with a brand new Volkswagen convertible after only a few months on the job. At the age of 26, he made the decision to move on to the more expansive fashion scene in Milan. His freelance career started off with him creating designs for labels like Callahan, Jenny, Complice, and Mario Valentino. Everyone could see that Gianni possessed extraordinary skill and that his creations were well worth a fortune. Annual clothing sales rose from $2 million to $6 million. Gianni worked as a freelancer in the Milan fashion industry for a total of 6 years, during which time he built extensive contacts. He was able to secure numerous contracts, increasing his annual income to the 6 figures. At long last, he mustered the courage to reveal himself to the world. He assembled his portfolio and successfully negotiated an exhibition at a prestigious Milan art museum. He was worried, but his concerns were unfounded. His designs were so well received that he soon began receiving requests from customers who wanted him to create dresses specifically for them. This was his first experience working with clients instead of designing for another company's brand. However, he didn't launch his own clothing line until he was 32 years old in 1978. Gianni's new clothing line was launched with the help of a wealthy Italian family who believed in him and his vision. His efforts to make connections within the fashion industry were finally bearing fruit. Gianni appointed his brother Santo as CEO and his sister Donatella as vice president because he placed a high value on family. Through their combined efforts, he was able to establish Gianni Versace Spa and open a store in Milan's most fashionable district. When he opened the store, there was only one rack of dresses, but he displayed such skill in what he put in the window. It was enough to attract female customers, and with that, the Versace label was off and running, on its way to making his entire family wealthy beyond imagination. Building the Versace brand, Donatella, Gianni's sister, uprooted to Milan to lend a hand in the family business. But after serving in that capacity for a while, she started to get tired of it. A child at heart, she was still a very young adult female who was at a crossroads in her life's direction. She ultimately settled on joining the fashion industry as a designer. To allow Donatella to sell her collections in the Versace boutique, Gianni launched a new line called Versace. Gianni was renowned for his use of unconventional fabrics in his designs. He was willing to use anything, including aluminium mesh, leather, rubber, lace, and more, to construct an outfit. He stood out from the crowd thanks to his unconventional use of materials. Gianni Versace clothes were notoriously skin-bearing as well. Both the media and the fashion industry were harsh in their criticism of him. Burberry dresses the wife, while Versace dresses the mistress, was an old saying. However, he paid no mind to the criticisms. His business thrived because he understood that women felt more confident when they flaunted their curves. After a while, Gianni's business became so successful that he needed to expand into other cities. Gianni Versace wanted to expand beyond the boundaries of the West. He launched his retail business in China in 1979. A lot of other fashion houses did not pay much attention to the Asian market at the time. However, there would be significant benefits to introducing Versace to China early on. His company, Versace, quickly rose to prominence and surpassed the competition. In the 1980s, he opened his first US stores, and by the 1990s, he had launched several successful clothing collections. Gianni was not only a talented fashion designer, but also an astute businessman who recognized the value of having well-known people promote his label by donning his designs. Therefore, he enlisted the aid of his contacts to make it so. Many famous people, including Elton John, Michael Jackson, Cher, Madonna, and even Princess Diana, were dressed by him. After pictures of his designs appeared in celebrity magazines, demand for Versace rocketed. Gianni Versace started using the same models in his runway shows repeatedly in the 1980s and 1990s. Versace has employed a number of well-known models, including Naomi Campbell and Cindy Crawford. In 1992, Versace took the level of controversy to a new high with the debut of his Miss S&M collection. The models wore leather harnesses as they walked down the runway. A similar year, Donatella's bondage dress at the Met Gala sparked a lot of discussion. However, this was having a profound impact on the fashion world, demonstrating that females were comfortable bearing their skin. "We have to really break barriers every day," Gianni was quoted as saying. "I think that fashion is always coming and going." Later, in 1994, Elizabeth Hurley went with Hugh Grant to the movie premiere of 4 Weddings and a Funeral as his +1. At the premiere, she wore a Versace gown secured with safety pins. The press went crazy, etc. Elizabeth's career took off after she wore this dress. It's true, the dress is so well known that it has its very own entry in Wikipedia. Furthermore, Versace evolved into more of a lifestyle brand over the years. Merchandise ranged from sheets to dinnerware and even pillowcases. Gianni aimed to create goods that could be purchased by anyone, regardless of income, not only the affluent and famous. A middle-class person may not be able to afford a Versace dress, but perfume and sunglasses weren't completely out of reach. In the end, this would be a fantastic move because it contributed to the brand's global recognition and success. Gianni was keeping a secret during his meteoric rise to fame and fortune as a gay man. The Assassination. Gianni and Antonio bought a mansion in the South Beach area in 1992 in Miami, where Gianni used to hang out at gay bars frequently. But he wasn't the type to join in on the drinking and dancing. He went in search of motivation, simply because he had an interest in people's clothing. Despite his wealth and celebrity status, he retained his modesty, conversing frequently with the neighborhood folks. Sadly, in 1993, Gianni Versace received the news that cancer had spread throughout his body. The fact that he was HIV positive also came out later. As Gianni put it, putting together a will in the event that his health failed completely. He was unaware that he would be murdered years before his illness would prove fatal. Outside of his Miami, Florida home on the morning of July 15, 1997, a cup of coffee and issues of Vogue and The New Yorker were brought to him. He was met by a 27-year-old man. He drew a weapon and executed Gianni by shooting him as he collapsed on his front steps. It's a complete fluke that a dove was also killed by the bullet that passed through him. While waiting for the police, the sight of the dead dove near his body led them to believe that the mafia had left a message. South Beach locals, devastated, erected a memorial on the steps of the city hall, where he met his end. Gianni Versace was mourned by more than 2,000 people. His funeral, which was attended by dozens of famous people and broadcast around the world. Andrew Cunanan, who murdered him, was a serial killer wanted in several jurisdictions, and the FBI was actively looking for him. His fame even extended to an appearance on America's Most Wanted. Andrew's body was discovered in a boat only 8 days after he murdered Gianni Versace. He had made the decision that death by suicide was preferable to incarceration. The American Crime Story. The Assassination TV series premiered on FX in 2018 of Gianni Versace, which suggests that Andrew may have been preoccupied with the fashion designer and then murdered Gianni after unsuccessfully trying to gain access to his life. It was said that Andrew was gay and got a job taking older men out on dates. So the show suggests he may have followed Gianni around and then killed him after trying to hire him as a prostitute. The case investigators, however, found no evidence that Andrew ever uttered a word. The real reason why Andrew killed Gianni Versace is still unknown. What happened next? The fashion house he founded was worth $807 million when he passed away. In his last will and testament, in his will, Gianni gave his sister Donatella a 20% stake in the business, whose role as creative director was carried on after his passing. Santo, his younger brother, was given 30% and is now the company's chairman. Surprisingly, Gianni's niece Allegra Versace Beck received the other 50% of the business. He treated his niece like a daughter, even referring to her as his little princess. Despite her young age, she was years old when he passed away, and this was a great start for her. At the age of 18, Allegra took advantage of the access to her $800 million inheritance to join the board of Versace. However, she was ambivalent about being chosen to represent the Versace label. Being confined, she avoided the family business because she was uncomfortable in the limelight and valued her privacy. Several businesses approached Gianni's family with offers of millions of dollars after he was shot, in order to acquire the Versace label. Investors told them things like, "No one in your family will ever have to work again," but they kept the business. They wanted to carry on Gianni's work independently. "It's not what my brother would have wanted," Donatella said, "me to sell even one office chair because the company meant too much to him as a family." The Versace family therefore kept the business running without outside help and triumphed despite enormous obstacles. Actually, Versace was a part of a shocking innovation. For the year 2000, Jennifer Lopez wore a dress designed by Donatella to the Grammys. It was a dress with a green jungle print that became an internet sensation. It became so well known that Google showed it to be the most searched subject. The one catch was that, back in the year 2000, the Google search interface was limited to text queries only. And here's a fun fact. YouTube's current CEO, Susan Wojcicki, who, because of this Versace dress, became Google's Director of Image Research and Development. Donatella, on the other hand, finds that it wasn't simple to get through the pain of losing Gianni. She had a tough time of it since her brother's passing, and she admitted that she later became hooked on drugs. Throughout, she spent a lot of her time in a haze while at Versace. It didn't help that the press claimed she was nothing more than a face for the company, insulting the value of her work as a designer. No one had faith in her potential to manage Versace following Gianni's death. This was doing even more damage to her sense of self-worth, which prompted her to seek relief through additional drug use. It became a never-ending loop. When Allegra turned 18, Donatella completely lost it at her party. Her speech became jumbled. Those closest to her were worried sick about her. Elton John, a family friend, set up an intervention for her, and she agreed to go to rehab. In 2014, the company's sales were declining, and it was no longer thriving as it once had been. The Versace family realized they needed assistance expanding their business, so they went looking for it. At first, they parted with 20% of the business to a private equity firm known as the Blackstone Group, and brought in a new head honcho in Jonathan Akeroyd. Reviving the Versace name was a priority for Jonathan, and it experienced a renaissance, attracting new, younger customers. But as time went on, it became obvious that the Versace family's next generation wasn't moving forward with the business as usual. Santo and Donatella had to make the hard choice to sell it in order to keep the business going in their brother's memory. The Versace fashion house was purchased by Capri Holdings in 2018 for a reported $2.12 billion. The company decided to keep both Donatella and Santo on staff. Additionally, Capri Holdings stock was included in the transaction. This resulted in $176 million in stock being distributed to the Versace family. A modest Italian dress shop started by a family has grown into a multi-billion-dollar global empire. Even after the Versace family has passed on, the name will endure, and it's still one of the most prestigious names in clothing.